So
guys see
Jake,
my?
yep, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you guys for allowing me to jump on and talk a little bit about the markets. As much as I'd love to, just give you guys all the features on Trendspider, I'm not going to bore anybody with that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you guys some of the main core features and how they've been useful over the last couple of days.
Okay, Jake, before you do that, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the business, what your background was before you came to Trendspider?
Sure. So my dad one day when I was like 12 years old said, "Hey, I want to give you an account to try to learn about the stock market." Wasn't a lot of money, but quickly blew up my account being, 12, 13 years old. And so that's how I started. In high school, I traded the financial crisis and was a little more successful with that. And really started my passion for technical analysis probably when I was 17 or 18.
Okay.
And so went to college.
What instruments, I'm curious, what instruments were you trading at 12 that you blew up your account?
I was only trading trends. So
I mean, options, equities, what were you trading?
Trade common stock.
Okay.
Yeah, it was so
Penny
like,
stocks?
No, they were actually bigger stocks. So they were like, what did I buy? Energen back in the day, like I think it was ENG or something. I did buy a couple penny stocks. Of course, I went to high school and my friend is like, "Oh yeah, my dad's got like 1 million shares of this stock that's like 0.001 cents." I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" And so that's how I got introduced to pennies.
Okay.
But in high school when I was trading the financial crisis, I was trading bigger stocks, but back then they were penny stocks. So I was trading AIG Capital, I was trading Genworth Financial, XL Capital, all of those stocks that pretty much dropped from like $20 down $2 or less. That's what I was trading. And then finally, when I got 17 or 18, it was weird. I started looking at Yahoo message boards. That's kind of how I started to learn. Someone would be like, "Oh yeah, the RSI is below 30. I'm like, "What's the RSI?" And so I just went on Google and Googled it and kind of tried to teach myself what some of these things meant. And then one day it just kind of clicked. I'm like, wow, you can actually like kind of predict price action sometimes looking at the RSI when it's oversold and the price is down. So that's what captured my interest. And then, as I mentioned, to school, studied economics, and that really put some of the pieces together even more. And once I graduated college, I started with a startup out of Duke University doing biomedical sales. So it was a spectrometer that I was selling, and I had no idea in hell what the hell a spectrometer was. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this successfully. And in the background, I started posting publicly on Yahoo Finance, got some good feedback, joined StockTwits, was able to gain a following pretty quickly, and I tried to monetize that. I did like a yearly subscription, and then from there, one of my subscribers introduced me to Dan, our founder, and I was brought on as a founding member about 1.5 years ago.
I wish you nothing but success. Very good story, and could tell that you're a member of the mafia. Have you ever noticed, Jake, that once you get involved in trading, you could maybe try and leave it or do other things, but it's kind of like Hotel California. You could check out, but you could never leave.
100%. So
can you turn your volume up just a little bit, buddy?
Yeah.
A little more volume.
Let me get my mic and I'll just plug that in. Much better.
Some of the attendees are saying low volume.
All right, no problem.
Okay, you there? No, we lost you. The volume's even lower. So you'll probably have to make an adjustment on, yeah, there you go, on what you're using. I guess I shouldn't have said anything. Jake? Okay, everyone. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it back. Too much dead air.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just about to give up. Okay,
Yeah.
go.
I'm not sure what happened there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So you need to share your screen again. I'll just tell Velu there's some dead air to edit out.
All right, can you guys see my screen again?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what was wrong there. But yeah, so as you were mentioning, pretty much tried to take a break for 3 months or something just when I moved out to Denver, and quickly realized that the market's kind of just where I was meant to be.
Okay, so tell us about some of the new wrinkles in what Trendspider is doing for traders.
Sure. So Trendspider is, you can see here, kind of at the base, a charting platform. But really the functionality is made to help your process of technical analysis be more efficient. So even on this chart, you'll see a couple things. Some of these things I annotated just to look for an interesting pattern that is forming. But you can see here, these dashed lines are actually moving averages from the weekly chart. So without having to split my screen and see how the weekly candle looks versus where the weekly moving averages are, I can just overlay these longer term moving averages on the daily chart, and you can see how the short term price action then reacts pretty well with these longer term levels.
Out of curiosity, what time periods do you use?
I usually am swing trading, but
no, I mean your moving averages. What are they?
Yep. So 20 for the SMA, and then 50 for the EMA.
Okay.
And so you'll see
Why
here.
Why did you choose those?
Just kind of testing them out over the years, and those are the ones that I generally like on SPY. And that's the thing, every stock has its own personality, so the 20 and the 50 may not necessarily act the same way on SPY as it does on Amazon or something like that. But the reason why I use these is you can see how the price action really respected this area in late September. And you can see how we broke down, bounced perfectly off the EMA 50 for like 4 days, tried to bounce to the upside, found hard resistance, and then broke down through the EMA 50. So, my question is, all right, well, my 2 daily moving averages have now broken down. I need to go to more of a top-down approach and see what the weekly moving averages are doing. And so without having to do anything, I just go to the W here, which stands for weekly, and I just switch these to on, and you can see once we broke down through that original EMA 50, look at where we caught a bid, right at the SMA 20 from the weekly chart. So you can see how these shorter term price levels are actually respecting these longer term moving averages very well. And so that's something that is really unique to Trendspider, where you don't need to split your screen. You can have everything on the same screen. This is just a quick annotation that I did showing anytime the market's been near kind of all-time highs, retesting all-time highs, it generally will do this type of pattern where you've got a hard breakdown. You break down through the SMA and down to the EMA. You can see that here, 1. We bounce from the EMA almost to the SMA 20 here, which is 2. And then pull back to retest the EMA, and this is back in 2018 when we just were crashing. But if you look back, Every time we've done this, another test, new all-time high, breakdown, pop to the upside. In this case, the EMA 50 and the SMA 20 were still kind of getting calibrated from this weird move here. But you can see once we finally kind of stabilized, same exact thing, new all-time high, breakdown, bounce off the EMA 50, retest to the SMA 20 from the weekly, and then back down. And so you can see here we've had the same thing, down move to the EMA 50, up to the SMA 20 on the weekly. And you can see today, this is a little bit delayed on the pre-market, but you'll see, we may be trying to retest this area. Who knows if we do or not? China news can easily move the market very quickly. So, but for now, it will be interesting to see if we have that same type of pattern retesting the EMA 50. So for me, the EMA 50 is what I call like the status quo line, where if we start breaking down through this area and close multiple days down below this area, that's going to be kind of a status quo changer, because we only did that once. And that was back in June. We quickly, within 5 days, just ripped right back up. So this is an important area to watch, and especially this area above this kind of double top, and we'll just see kind of what happens.
So let me ask you, back when you broke down under that EMA, you have labeled 3. Was that a short signal? And then you got out the next day because it closed back above it?
So for me, no. I actually use the alpha.
Because there was no reason to cover down there based upon what you use.
I'll show you kind of why
on this chart.
This wasn't that bearish, because I use the Alpha Trends anchored VWAP. So I like to anchor the VWAP from important areas of support or pivot areas. Like in this case, we bottomed out on December 24th. And so Brian Shannon, lucky enough to learn from him firsthand. And one of the things he told me was, you need to anchor from important areas, like important reversals. So back on December 24th, or you could even do this one. I personally like to do this one. If I anchor the VWAP here, look at how perfectly the price action respected that area. So you can see, even though it broke down through the EMA 50, price action really needs to break down through this anchored VWAP here for it to really be a status quo changer. Notice
do you teach these things, Jake?
I personally used to in my subscription, but right now I'm on the business side for Trendspider. But I'm obsessed with charts. I've been doing charts for a long time, and I just love to chart every day.
So how do people learn how to use your product effectively?
So we do webinars every Sunday. So technically, I guess I do teach through that, but I don't have like a subscription service or anything that I'm teaching. I do all the teaching through the webinars on Trendspider, and we have all types of videos as well. So, that's how you can kind of learn how to utilize all these different things. So for me, if we did break down through the EMA 50, the Alpha Trends anchored VWAP would be the biggest thing that I'm watching here to break down. And the cool thing is, let's say that we did break down, started to, move towards this area here. What I can do is I can actually create an alert on this line, this anchored VWAP, and I can increase or decrease the sensitivity here. So instead of the price action having to hit exactly right on this line, cool. I can give myself some margin of error rather than
a band. You give it instead of it being concrete, it's a mattress.
Exactly. It's more.
You like that?
Yeah. No, I do.
You could use it.
All right. I'll have to get.
Okay. It's not mine. I think it was Carter Worth on CNBC. That support and resistance zones aren't just like concrete. They're more like a mattress. They have some give and take.
Yep. And this, you could see this here, right? So on the EMA, let me just remove the anchored VWAP here. But even on the EMA 50, right, in August, we never actually closed at this line. These were all wicks that barely got there. So what you can do is do the same thing on this area where back in August, you were able to capture these moves through this margin of error rather than having to say, all right, alert me when it hits this exact line. Because what happens is, that wick may have happened so quickly you weren't able to catch it. So with our system, you can go in and say, all right, I want to know when the price touches anywhere within this area. And I want to know whenever the 15-minute candle closes in this area. So you don't have to wait for the daily candle to close. You're able to capture that price action within the wick by using a smaller confirmation candle. So that means whenever the 15-minute candle closes here, you'll get that alert. You can get it through email or text. So it's another way to make things more efficient. The multi-time frame analysis is going to make your technical analysis more efficient from a kind of consolidating the chart perspective, where you're not having to have 3 or 4 different charts open. You've got all of your main levels on one chart, and it generally kind of keeps things a little less messy. But then on top of that, the alert system is there to really kind of capture these moves when you're not able to stare at the screen all day. And even if you are able to stare at the screen all day, you're only able to watch one stock efficiently if you've only got, one chart open. You can have a ton of different screens, but you only have 2 sets of eyes. You can only watch so many things. So this is here to be a secondary perspective and a secondary set of eyes for you. So you don't have to watch the screen constantly. The system's doing it for you.
Nice.
One of the cool things I wanted to show you guys about IWM, this is a cool case study on the lower Bollinger Band. So you can see here, the daily price action has respected these two weekly moving averages pretty well. But what the heck is causing this area down here to catch a bid? Well, I can go to the Bollinger Bands, and you'll see here when I turn on the weekly Bollinger Band, you can see how perfectly the shorter term price action, the daily candles, are respecting this band here. And so you can see here, finally on Thursday, we barely missed the band. And this is like your case study textbook example of when to use the alerts. Because you can see here, if you guys can see when I zoom in, the wick actually never got to this lower band here.
Hear of the, Jake, ever hear of the Hands of Time?
Maybe.
That's a band I was in junior high.
Nice.
Oh, you were talking bands. All right, go ahead, buddy.
These are, you may have been familiar with the lower bands then. They must have been
garage bands.
Yeah. But so that's an example here where you're able to kind of capture that margin of error. I'm having a little trouble moving this right now. But the point is you can kind of see how instead of having to hit that exact line, you've got this sensitivity, this margin of error, and you'll see it's going to alert within 18 cents of the selected line. So it's really useful when you're doing other stuff. You may have a full-time job. You don't have time to look at the charts all day, but you do have the levels that you want to watch. And so it's kind of allowing the market to come to you and you defining your parameters that you want to be alerted when you get to a specific area, and the system will alert you, and then it's time to either trade it, sit on your hands, whatever the case may be. So it's really an interesting way to kind of do that. One thing that I wanted to show as well is something you guys have probably never seen before, and this is something that's completely unique to Trendspider. It's something called, and what I did just now is I turned on the trends, so you can see all these trend lines are automatically popping up. But I'm going to turn these off for now and just draw my own just for this example. Let's draw this line to this line. And this was kind of a pretty obvious level everybody was watching back in mid-September. And what's really interesting about this is you can see these wicks were over the line. But we don't have much information about what the volume was doing around this line. So what I can do is I can go to Raindrops, which is a completely new type of candle. And you can see here, it looks very different than you've probably ever seen. The Raindrops are a volume-based candle. So what you're able to do is you're able to actually capture some of the margin of error, or excuse me, not margin of error. You can capture some of the profile of the volume within these wicks that I just showed you guys. So in this case, I'll kind of decipher one to show you guys how it works. So if anyone's familiar with a bar chart, these are essentially just a volume-based bar chart. So you can see here when I lower the opacity, this looks just like a bar chart, except instead of this being the open and this being the close, this is the volume weighted average price for the first half of the period, and this is the volume weighted average price for the second half of the period. So you can see, you know, when the second half of the period's VWAP is lower than the first, it's red. You've got this. You've got a green one when the left side VWAP is lower than the right side. So whenever that second half of the period is higher, you've got green. And then you've got a blue raindrop, which is when the VWAP for the first half of the period and the second half of the period equal each other. And so that's something that I'll go into briefly in a second, but it's really an indicator for volatility.
Does it give you size of volume?
It does not. It just gives you the volume flow. So if you turned on the actual just volume bar down here, you'd be able to see, okay, we've got an uptick in volume here, and this is how that volume was flowing throughout the period.
Okay.
So the cool thing about this is there's a second part to this. We just went over the different bars and what those mean. They're essentially volume weighted. But what you can also do is what I'm doing is increasing the body opacity, meaning we're showing the actual volume profile on the bars here. So what you can do is, let me just get rid of the volume here. What you can do is you can see when we finally broke out through this line, the first time we broke out, there was barely any volume. So this little squiggly line here is the volume profile for the first half of the period. So it's no different than any other candle. The low here is the low of the day. The high is the high of the day. And then you can see where that volume has been kind of allocated throughout the price range during the left side, which is the first half of the period. So during the first half of the period, we can see most of that volume was centered right in the middle of this price action. We had very slight volume breaking up through this trend line. So we can see there wasn't a lot of conviction by the buyers. And then during the second half of the period, there was no volume at all above that trend line. And we know that because this is flat. So if there was any volume during the second half of the period, you would have seen some type of volume profile here. However, the volume profile is focused below the trend line. During the second day, you can see we tried to break through it, but there still wasn't a ton of volume above that line. And then you can see the conviction just wasn't really there by the buyers. And then we went straight back down to the lower weekly Bollinger Band. So this is a way to kind of see if breakouts or breakdowns are real. Another cool example of this is on QQQ back in October. And you can see this here where we had this very defined downtrend. And you had the same type of deal. You had kind of right here, you had this third time testing this area. And it looks pretty much exactly how the IWM looked. You had a little bit of volume above the line, but most of that volume was focused below the trend line, and then you had a hard move down.
I have a couple questions from viewers. Can you set a minimum volume for the profile? Scott would like to know.
A minimum volume meaning only show me volume above X amount?
Certain number,
No, not right now.
You can't customize it. Okay, can you use an anchored VWAP?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So one of the cool things to do is anchoring the VWAP from a blue raindrop. So for example, if we went to let's say Google, this is something I use the anchored VWAP on a lot. You can see here, what I sometimes will do is I'll anchor the VWAP from the last two blue raindrops, since those are like the two true equilibrium prices that have occurred in the last X amount of days. And I started anchoring the VWAP, I think, around here or something. So none of this price action was there yet. So, but what I do is if I anchor it from the last two raindrops, you'll see how nicely the price action will respect this. And then Brian Shannon, as I mentioned, likes to anchor from status quo changing points. So this is another one I'd anchor from, just being a gap up. And then you can see how nicely the price action respected this area as resistance, finally gapped above it, found support, and then kind of respected this area for quite some time. So you can anchor the VWAP from these areas. It's just kind of finding what works for you. The blue raindrop is not something that I would always just go to anchor from, but there are some really cool examples of, this being very robust as far as catching some interesting areas. This is the same thing. What I did was I anchored the VWAP from here on March 19th and from here on the 24th. These were the last two blue raindrops. And you can see as time went by how beautifully the price action found support right on these two lines. And then finally, the downtrend started once we broke through those two lines. What I did here was I just anchored the VWAP again on the blue raindrop. And you can see how well the price action has respected that area. We bounced right up to this area, found hard resistance. Here, the price kind of jumping around it. And then finally, we broke down again. So for me, the first area I'd look at is the anchored VWAP here and create the alert and that type of thing. So you can see here.
Jake, can you use Trendspider on crypto and FX?
Yes, you can.
Okay, yep. There you go, Gregarios.
So Euro USD, I haven't looked at it in a while, but one of the cool things about this is if I just delete everything, you're able to actually have the system look at trend lines for you. So if I turn on the trend line feature here, you'll see all of these different areas that are popping up. So this isn't necessarily like to replace your technical analysis. It's essentially giving you a permutation of a bunch of lines, and then you're able to kind of see, what your perspective is. So for example, there can be all different types of perspectives here. You can have, this bigger channel here that you can capture, and then this shorter term channel. So it's a way to kind of show you different ideas rather than just replacing what you're doing by hand.
Okay, wow, very interesting, Jake, and a work in progress, I'm sure, as always, and raindrops, new terminology for me. So if you'd like right now, you could show your website, and if people are interested in pursuing this, how they can reach you besides your Twitter handle @Trendspider with an I, not a Y.
Yes. Yep. So you can reach me at jake@trendspider.com if you have any questions. My Twitter handle is Trendspider Jake. So if you did want to just send me a DM, or you can send us a DM on our actual Twitter handle, Trendspider. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. This is the website, so trendspider.com. You can go to the product page and check out all of the different features. So we have, the back tester, we have multi-factor alerts, being able to code in conditions without actually having to code anything in. So we have a visual interface rather than like a Pine script or a Python model where you actually have to know how to code. You just have to know your conditions, and then you can create the logic very easily. Our pricing page is here. So we have a ton of different plans. We have a ton of different pricing models where you can choose monthly or yearly. Yearly, you're going to save up to possibly 35% depending on whatever plan you use. And it's as you mentioned, we're still very much a small startup. So what you see on the platform is constantly being upgraded and updated. And we have a ton more features coming.
Okay. Well, Jake, I want to thank you for coming here and showing some really unique things. Makes me think like when the S&P top is finally in, that you might have a theme song you could consider using for your company. Raindrops keep falling on my head. Okay.
Absolutely. No, it's a real thing, especially blue raindrops. Make sure to check out the blue raindrops because they can be very interesting in those hard levels of support.
Okay, and if you sign up for a year, Jake, they also send out an umbrella just in case you misread a few raindrops. And Jake, I wish you and your partners prosperity. And I think that anything you can do to edify and help people trade is probably also a good product for a beginner to get different pictures from your automatic trend line feature that they may not be able to visualize. It takes a while, a lot of screen time. So wish you nothing but success, my trading warrior brother.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and hope we can do this again.
All right, Jake. Good hunting. Everyone, you could find Jake on Twitter @Trendspider, TRENDSPIDER. Hope everyone had a good turnaround Tuesday. See everyone tomorrow for Yom Kippur. I will be here. Adios. And remember, don't just count your raindrops or your pips, count your blessings. Adios. See you, Jake.